Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." We have believed this for hundreds of years growing up to identify with thought. And what thought does is it puts us in a prison. And we are in this prison and we are trying to figure out, how do we free ourselves? How do we escape? And the great travesty most of us make is we try to free ourselves through more thought. So we use the actual prison or the prison guard as a source to free us. And this just ends up further shackling us. So now we're in prison and now we're chained and tied up and shackled because we're using thought as a method to free us, to end our problems, to end our suffering, to create happiness. When all this time, thought is the problem. It's not the solution. And something happens, beautiful synergy happens in your life when we take away and thought-centered living. We just minimize it. We don't focus and spend all our time slumbering in thought. We tap our spirit. And thought has its practical purposes. If you're trying to figure out a math problem, if you are building a house, if you are buying insurance, thought has its purpose, but for the most part, thought is the problem, not the solution. So taking away all the energy we devote towards thought and instead observing the thoughts and then try something beautiful. It's like the difference between sailing to Hawaii, where you're just gliding with the wind and the wind carries you on your journey in your sailboat, or rowing and paddling to Hawaii, and you're just rowing and struggling and the current's taking you this way and that way and you're fighting against the current. That's the difference between thought and then spirit-centered living. And oftentimes we have to catch ourselves and say, oh, I'm buried in thought. I'm back in the prison. And there's something wonderful about just turning our lives over to spirit, where we don't even need to analyze and think and be consumed by the mind. We just say, okay, here's a question. Here's a problem. Here's a struggle I'm having in my life. I'm going to just turn it over to my spirit. And at the right time, the spirit will provide the fruit, the answers. It just comes to you. And oftentimes when I'm making these videos, I have no idea what the topic's going to be until maybe, a couple minutes before I sit down in front of the computer, and you just let the music come out of you. And there's no thought, planning, and control. It's the complete opposite of needing to control and manipulate and think and work out what the best option is. It's relying on a higher power, a higher source, the same source that keeps the universe in synchronicity and synergy and flow, the waves, the tides going in and out. There's not thought. It just happens. And we just need to let go of our lives. Let go of trying to control our thoughts, our circumstances, our life situations, our solutions to all our perceived problems. When we just let go and practice being, it takes all the weight of the world off you and you can sail. And it's residing in stillness. Because a lot of people might say, well, how do I get out of thought? My mind consumes me from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. And our mind can be so oppressive that we turn to television to quiet it, or to go to go below thought, or we turn on cell phones, text messages, computers, entertainment, shopping, gossip, all these things we do to try to relieve the burden of thought that weighs upon our spirit. But this is really only an aspirin. It doesn't solve the problem. And the best way to move beyond thought is faith. When we have faith, just like the blades of grass, they have faith they're going to grow. A tree that starts off as a seedling has faith it's going to grow into a beautiful oak tree or a redwood tree. It's a knowing that doesn't require efforting or worry or fear. If it gets struck by lightning, it gets struck by lightning. It's not consumed by that. And it's just, at this moment, I'm just going to be a seedling. At this moment, I'm going to be a sprig. At this moment, I'm going to be a little baby tree. And it's living in that moment and not getting caught up with the past or the future is the first way to move back into spirit. The second way is to practice stillness and to trust our inner guide and just focus on what makes us living, sentient human beings. Is it our mind? Well, that's what we've been taught, our mind, but what knows that a mind exists? What part of us is able to identify a mind? And it's that part that is our higher being, our higher essence. So just tapping into that and letting the mind, you can't use willpower to stop the mind and thoughts. Let the mind do whatever it's going to do. But we don't have to buy into it. It's like watching a movie, but we're awake. We realize that this is not a scary movie. It's just pictures being projected upon the screen. And then we go inward and we just listen. There's a beautiful thing that I call reverse prayer. And most of the time we go to God and we say, I need this, I need that. And instead, it's listening and finding out what the essence of our spirit is and letting that percolate to the top, to bubble to the top. We are so busy and distracted that our lives have that chaotic and lower level energy. So thought operates on that same wavelength generally. But when we slow ourselves down, spend time in nature, or spend time, take a bath or listen to really beautiful, soothing music, and it's raising our frequency level, you start to tap in and be in tune with your spirit. And your spirit has all the answers you need. It has enlightenment, and it has clarity. It has solutions to all our perceived problems. It's just we're not listening. And it's because there's so much static in the busyness of our everyday lives. So just quieting down and listening. And another very helpful thing is to focus on the breath. I talked about this in one of the other videos, but just focusing on the breath and just bringing our brain waves down to a theta or beta state. I believe it's the alpha, that's just this hyperactive one. And in that stillness and in that slowness and in that peace, clarity exists. And we no longer have to be so dependent on thought to live our lives. We become spiritual beings, and that muscle of spirit becomes so strong that life becomes like sailing to Hawaii. It's just a beautiful, effortless, peaceful journey when we move out of here and then into here. Thanks for watching.